Hello, second grade Cougars. So last time we looked at liquids, we put some liquids in bottles and then we poured them back and forth, and we noticed a couple of things that are important properties about liquids. Liquids pour, right? We can pour them from one place to the other. Liquids pour. Liquids take the shape of the container they're in. So if we put them in a tall, skinny container, liquids become tall and skinny. If we put them in a wide, flat container, the liquids become wide and flat. Liquids flow and spread out. Do you remember when I spilled some of the water on the table? The liquid spread out and flowed and almost went off the table, right? And liquids have a flat level. The top of the water or the liquid is flat and parallel to the surface of the earth. I have a liquid here and the top is flat. And as I turn the liquid, the top is still flat. The level is always parallel to the surface of the floor, of the ground. So no matter how I move the bottle, the level is always flat. So those are properties of liquids. Well, now I have some new materials that I want us to look at, and I want to find out, are these things liquid? So I had asked you guys to get a bunch of different materials, some cornmeal or flour, some beans and some rice. And now I want us to kind of take a look at them and find out what kind of material they are. Okay, so one of the first things in a property of a liquid is that it pours, right? Liquids pour. So I have a bottle of some rice, and I'm going to pour it into this bowl. So I poured that rice. That's interesting. I have some cornmeal, and I'm going to pour it into this bowl. I poured it, right? I have some mung beans, and I'm going to, you know what, pour it into the bowl. So I have these three materials, and they all pour. So I don't want us to talk about what they are yet, but a property of liquid is that it pours. And these things just pour. The next thing I want to test is whether they take the shape of their container. So I'm going to start with the cornmeal. And what I did, boys and girls, I just got an old bottle, a plastic bottle, and I cut it so I can make a funnel. You might have a funnel at home that you could use. I like to reuse things, so I just used a funnel like that. I'm going to take my cornmeal and I'm going to pour it, right? I can pour it. And I'm going to pour it into the bottle. Oh, it's a little full. And it looks to me like it took the shape of the container. If you have some other materials, can you pour them into a bottle? So I just took all the material that were in my bowls and I poured them into the bottles. And now they certainly appear that they have taken the shape of the bottle. Here is the cornmeal. It's this shape. And when I pour it into the bowl, now it's the shape of the bowl. Interesting. So the next thing on the list is that liquids flow and spread out. So I have some water here in a bowl, and I'm going to pour it onto the table. So liquids pour, liquids take the shape of the container. The water is doing all of those things. So I'm going to now pour some water on the table, and this water is spreading out. It is flowing. And if I keep adding more water, now it's dripping off the table. It is spreading out and flowing. Okay, I just took a minute and I wiped up all the water off of the table. And now I'm going to see what happens when I pour this cornmeal. So if it's a liquid, it should flow and spread out. Okay, let's see what happens. It didn't do that, did it? So let's try the rice. Oh, it's a little too close. So what happened? It didn't flow, it didn't spread out, it made a pile. It made a pile. So that is something that's different about liquids. Liquids flow and spread out. This material makes a pile. Okay, I have a quarter, and I'm going to put the quarter on top of my pile of rice. And it sits on top of the pile of rice. I'm going to try putting the quarter on top of the pile of cornmeal. It sits on top of the pile of cornmeal. Now, I'm going to put the quarter on top of the water. It sinks down to the bottom, right? That's because it's a liquid, and my quarter is heavy. It's made out of metal, and it sinks. But the quarter does not sink on the cornmeal. Okay, the last thing that we talked about in terms of liquids is that liquids have a flat level, right? So here is my green water, and it has a flat level. Well, so does the cornmeal. The cornmeal seems to have a flat level. Now, let's tip the bottles. They don't look exactly the same, do they? The cornmeal is sticking together. It does not have a flat level. So this is flat, but it's not level to the surface of the ground. The level of the water is flat and parallel to the surface of the ground. Do you see how the cornmeal is sticking together and making a pile? The water does not do that. So I don't think these things are liquid. I think there's something else. This is a different type of material. I think we should look really closely at this material and see if we can find something interesting about it. I can put it in my fingers. I can feel individual pieces. They're very small. To me, these seem to be solids, but very small solids. And because they are small solids, they can pour because lots of little tiny pieces are pouring. And because they are small solids, they can take the shape of the container. But because they're solids and not liquids, they kind of make a pile, and the level is not always flat and parallel to the surface of the earth. We say that these small solids are small particles. All right, let's take out your science notebook and turn to the next blank page. There's nothing to glue in this week. We're just going to do some writing together. And I'm sorry, it's a lot of writing. Boys and girls, make sure you put the date at the top of the page and the page number at the bottom. And this is what I wrote. Today, we looked at a new material. We compared it to liquids. The new material pours and takes the shape of the container, but it does not have a flat level. The new material seems to be very small solids. They are called particles. All right, we are going to continue exploring these new particles and find out more about them next week. See you next week, Cougars.